In a small Texas neighborhood, the arrival of October meant only one thing: Halloween was just around the corner. This wasn't just another holiday, it was a cherished tradition that brought the community together. Each year, families would dive into the spirit of Halloween, transforming their homes into eerie landscapes of ghosts, ghouls, and cobwebs. The streets glimmered with orange and purple lights, pumpkins grinned with jagged smiles, and eerie sounds echoed through the crisp autumn air. This particular year, excitement buzzed even more than usual. A local store announced an enticing promotion. The best decorated house would win an all-expenses-paid trip to New York City. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a competitive spirit among neighbors. Families rallied together, pooling their creativity and resources to create the most frighteningly beautiful displays. Children eagerly painted posters, and adults spent late nights assembling elaborate decorations. The neighborhood transformed into a haunted wonderland, each home trying to outdo the last. Among the flurry of decorations, one house on Maple Street captured everyone's attention. It belonged to the Johnson family, a family known for their warm smiles and neighborly kindness. This year, however, they seemed to morph into something almost obsessive. Their yard was a chaotic yet captivating scene, featuring a lifelike graveyard, fog machines that sent swirling mist across the lawn, and a towering skeleton that loomed ominously over the other decorations. The flickering lights gave an otherworldly glow, casting long, distorted shadows on the ground. As Halloween approached, whispers began circulating. Some neighbors remarked on how the Johnsons had been spending every waking hour on their display, neglecting other responsibilities. Yet, most brushed off these concerns. After all, who wouldn't want to win a trip to New York? Halloween night arrived, and the Johnson home became a beacon of excitement. Children flocked to their yard, giggling nervously as they navigated the spooky scene. The air was thick with the scent of pumpkin spice, and the sounds of laughter and shrieks mingled in the night. But beneath the festive atmosphere, something sinister lingered, barely perceptible to those who were caught up in the fun. As the night wore on, a strange chill began to creep into the air. The wind rustled the leaves with an unsettling whisper, and shadows danced just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. Yet, the Johnsons continued their celebration, blissfully unaware of the dark energy that seemed to gather around them. As midnight approached, the festivities began to wind down. Families returned home, filled with candy and stories to share. But the Johnson house remained a spectacle, glowing eerily in the night. Neighbors could see the family through the windows, laughing and celebrating their victory. But then, as the clock struck 12, the lights flickered and went dark. Days passed, and the excitement faded. Yet, the Johnson house remained oddly silent. Calls to the family went unanswered, and when neighbors peered through their windows, they found the decorations still intact, as if frozen in time. The sight felt unsettling, but no one wanted to pry into the family's affairs. But then came the smell. A foul, rotting stench began to waft from the house, creeping into neighboring yards and disturbing the peace of the once vibrant community. The odor was so potent that even the bravest among them could not ignore it. Whispers turned to worries, and worries to fear. After a week of unanswered calls and the unbearable stench, the neighbors finally decided to take action. They gathered at the end of the street, their expressions etched with concern. Someone suggested calling the police, and with a collective nod, they did just that. When officers arrived, they approached the Johnson house with caution. The once festive facade now felt foreboding. They knocked on the door, but silence enveloped them. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, the smell growing stronger as they stood on the porch. With no response and a growing sense of dread, They decided to force their way inside. As the door creaked open, an oppressive darkness loomed. The officers flicked on their flashlights, illuminating the disarray within. The living room was still decked out in Halloween decorations, but it felt different, stale, as if it hadn't been touched in days. Then they spotted it. A figure slumped on the floor. Rushing closer, their hearts sank. It was the body of the Johnson matriarch, her eyes wide and unseeing. Next to her lay the lifeless body of her son, still clutching a handful of candy from Halloween night. Panic surged through the officers. They called for backup, their voices shaking as they moved deeper into the house, their flashlights revealing more horror with each step. As they made their way through the dimly lit hallway, a sense of foreboding washed over them. They noticed the decorations. There was something off about them, something that made their skin crawl. They felt the heaviness in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Their search led them outside, to the yard where the towering skeleton had once stood proudly. It caught their attention. Something seemed wrong. As they approached, they realized with horror that it wasn't just a decoration. Hanging from a tree was the body of Mr. Johnson, swaying slightly in the breeze. His skin was pale and discolored, a gruesome mockery of the festive spirit that had once enveloped the house. The sight was sickening. The officers were overwhelmed, their minds racing to comprehend the nightmare before them. The decorations had not been mere plastic and paint, but rather a grotesque display of the family's demise. Panic set in as they realized that the very decorations that had won the contest were now the haunting remnants of a tragedy. As they began to piece together the horrific scene, the whispers of the neighborhood turned into cries of terror. They discovered that the Johnson family had been dead for several days, their bodies left to rot in plain sight. But why had no one noticed? Why had no one gone to check on them sooner? With the discovery came a wave of questions, and the police began their investigation. As they delved deeper, a chilling legend emerged. The whispers among neighbors suggested that something supernatural had occurred that fateful Halloween night. Some spoke of a curse, a family from the world of the dead that had taken the place of the Johnsons, killing them and using their bodies to create a horrifying display. The story sent shivers down the spines of everyone who heard it. The legend told of a thin veil between the living and the dead on Halloween night, a night when malevolent spirits could cross over and inhabit homes, turning joyous celebrations into deadly traps. The Johnson family had unwittingly opened their doors to darkness, inviting it in with their obsession to win the contest. In the days that followed, the neighborhood transformed. Fear replaced the joy of Halloween. No one dared to venture near the Johnson house. Even the bravest of souls felt a chill when they passed by, the weight of the tragedy hanging heavy in the air. The house stood abandoned, its once vibrant decorations now fading and peeling away, becoming a haunting reminder of the horrors that unfolded within its walls. As weeks turned into months, stories of the Johnson family faded into ghostly whispers. The neighborhood moved on, but the house remained a decaying shell of its former self, a chilling testament to the darkness that had taken place there. Neighbors told tales of strange sounds at night, of flickering lights in the windows long after the sun had set, and of shadows moving through the yard when the moon hung low in the sky. Some claimed to see the figures of the family, wandering restlessly in the darkness, trapped between two worlds. The tale of the Johnsons became a local legend, passed down from generation to generation, a story to warn children about the dangers of Halloween night. But one fateful night, a babysitter named Lisa, unaware of the house's dark history, was assigned to watch a group of children in the neighborhood. The family had recently moved in and was excited about their first Halloween. Lisa had heard the whispers, but she brushed them off as mere superstition. As dusk fell, Lisa prepared for the night. The children were buzzing with excitement, their eyes wide as they decorated the house with paper ghosts and pumpkins. They giggled and shrieked with delight, unaware of the shadow that loomed over them. Lisa glanced out the window and saw the Johnson house, its dark silhouette standing against the moonlit sky. As the hours passed, the children fell asleep, leaving Lisa alone in the living room. The air grew colder, and she felt a chill creep up her spine. She tried to shake it off, but the unease lingered, a constant reminder that she was alone in a neighborhood haunted by tragedy. As she settled into the couch, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from a friend, teasing her about being a scaredy cat. Lisa chuckled, but quickly grew quiet, the playful atmosphere turning tense as she heard something outside, a soft rustling, followed by an almost imperceptible whisper. "Hello?" she called, her voice shaky. Silence enveloped the room, making her heart race. Was it just the wind? She pushed the thought aside and returned to her phone, scrolling mindlessly. But then, the phone rang a call from the unknown. Taking a deep breath, Lisa answered, her voice steady. "Hello?" The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the stillness of the Johnson house, each tick echoing in the quiet darkness. Lisa sat on the couch, flipping through channels on the TV, trying to keep herself distracted. She had been babysitting the Johnson kids for a few months now, and tonight she was alone with them in this large, old house. The parents were out for the evening, and Lisa had promised to keep an eye on the kids until they returned. As she settled on a boring late-night movie, the phone rang, shattering the silence. Startled, Lisa glanced at the caller ID. It was blocked. She hesitated, glancing down the dark hallway where the children slept. With a sigh, she answered the phone, holding her breath. "Hello?" she said, her voice slightly shaky. A raspy voice crackled on the other end, sending chills down her spine. "Have you checked the children?" Lisa's heart raced, and a wave of fear washed over her. She hung up, trying to convince herself it was just a prank. But as she glanced out the window, she felt a tightening in her chest. The Johnson house loomed in the darkness, its windows like hollow eyes watching her. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows, and she tried to shake off the creeping dread that settled in her stomach. It was just the wind, she told herself. Just an old house settling. Time dragged on, and Lisa focused on the movie, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that hung in the air. With each passing minute, her mind replayed the strange phone call. What if it wasn't just a prank? The unease grew stronger, and finally, Lisa decided she needed to check on the kids. She moved quietly down the hallway, careful not to make a sound. The shadows danced around her, flickering in the dim light from the living room. As she peeked into their room, she found them sound asleep, looking innocent and peaceful. Their soft breathing was a comforting reminder that everything was okay. But just as she turned to leave, a loud thump echoed from the living room, making her jump. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tiptoed back, drawn by an unseen force. The atmosphere felt thick with dread, and the air was heavy, almost suffocating. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. "Hello?" she called again, trying to keep her voice steady. But there was no answer, only the rustling of leaves outside and the chilling wind howling through the cracks in the old house. Taking a deep breath, Lisa stepped into the living room. She noticed something strange. The curtains were moving, as if someone was behind them. Her pulse quickened as she approached, heart pounding like a drum in her ears. As she drew closer, the cold air wrapped around her, making her skin prickle. It felt as though the house was alive, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. The curtains fluttered gently, but there was no breeze, only an unsettling silence. Just as she reached out to pull them aside, she heard a voice, a soft, faint whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "Have you checked the children?" it asked, echoing in her mind. Panicking, Lisa stepped back, her breath quickening. She rushed down the hall, desperate to reach the kids. But as she reached their door, it creaked open on its own, revealing an empty room. The beds were unmade, the blankets lay crumpled, but the children were gone. "Where are you?" she called, panic rising in her throat. She dashed through the house, searching frantically, but found nothing. The house felt alive with the weight of the past, shadows darting in the corners of her vision. "This isn't happening," she thought. "They can't be gone." Her mind raced as she recalled the tales she had heard about the Johnson house. It was an old mansion, filled with stories of tragedy and loss. Many people said it was haunted, but Lisa never believed those stories. She had always dismissed them as mere legends until now. Then, she heard it again, the raspy voice from before, now echoing through the hallways. "Have you checked the children?" It was louder now, a sinister laughter that chilled her to the bone. The voice seemed to wrap around her like a shroud, filling her with dread. Desperate to escape, Lisa ran to the front door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it. Heart racing, she turned to face the darkened hall. Shadows flickered around her, twisting and turning as if they were alive. The air felt heavy, thick with sorrow and malevolence. "Help!" she screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. The house swallowed her cries, leaving her alone with the darkness. The whispering grew louder, echoing through her mind, drowning her in a cacophony of terror. "Have you checked the children?" In that moment, Lisa understood the truth. The spirits of the Johnson family were not resting, they had taken the children. Their laughter echoed through the halls, a haunting melody that sent her heart racing. She felt their presence surrounding her, a swarm of unseen forces that pressed down on her with unbearable weight. The shadows danced along the walls, twisting into grotesque forms that reached for her, desperate to pull her into their darkness. She had to get out. With every ounce of strength, she fought against the terror. She needed to pry the door open to escape this nightmare. As she struggled with the door, she glanced back at the hallway. It felt endless, a dark tunnel that promised no salvation. The whispering intensified, swirling around her like a storm. She could feel the spirits growing restless, their frustration rising as they watched her struggle. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline, Lisa managed to pry the door open. She stumbled into the cool night air, gasping for breath, but the horror followed her, lingering just beyond her sight. The laughter of the spirits echoed in her ears, cruel and mocking. In the distance, she could hear the faint echoes of laughter, twisted and cruel, as if the spirits were mocking her. The Johnson house stood behind her, a dark silhouette against the night sky, its windows glowing faintly with an eerie light. With shaking legs, she took off running, her heart racing as she fled the neighborhood, vowing never to return. What if they were still inside? What if the spirits had taken the children somewhere she couldn't reach them? As she ran, memories flooded her mind, playing with the kids, reading them stories, and their innocent laughter filling the air. Were they gone for good? Just then, a chilling thought struck her. What if she had missed something? What if the children were still in the house, hiding, and she had left them behind? Panic clawed at her insides, urging her to turn back. "No," she gasped, shaking her head. "They're gone. They have to be gone." But even as she said the words, doubt crept in. She could still hear the whispers, still feel the weight of the spirits pressing against her. They were calling for her, pulling her back into the darkness. As she reached the end of the street, she slowed, looking back at the Johnson house. Its silhouette loomed against the sky, the windows glowing ominously. A sense of dread filled her as she considered the legends she had dismissed. Was it all true? Suddenly, a soft sound caught her attention. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of children's laughter echoing through the night. It was coming from the house. Lisa's heart raced. "Kids!" she shouted, panic rising in her throat. "Where are you?" Desperation took over, and before she knew it, she was running back toward the house, driven by the hope that the children were still inside. She had to find them. As she reached the front porch, the door swung open, creaking slowly as if inviting her inside. Lisa hesitated, fear gripping her heart, but the laughter grew louder, filling her with a sense of urgency. "Please," she whispered, stepping inside. "I need to find you." The air inside was cold, and the atmosphere felt thick with tension. Shadows flickered around her, but the laughter rang clear, echoing down the hallway. She moved cautiously, her heart pounding as she followed the sound. "Kids?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Where are you?" The laughter seemed to dance away from her, leading her deeper into the house. She passed the living room, glancing at the moving curtains, but she kept going, driven by the hope that the children were waiting for her. As she reached the kitchen, the laughter stopped abruptly. A heavy silence fell over the room, making her skin crawl. Lisa's breath quickened, and she felt a sense of foreboding settle over her. "Hello?" she called again, but no answer came. Just then, she heard the raspy voice, now a whisper, sending chills down her spine. "Have you checked the children?" it asked, echoing in her mind. "Stop it," Lisa shouted, clenching her fists. "Where are they?" The air grew cold, and shadows gathered around her, twisting and turning like dark smoke. The walls seemed to close in, and she felt the weight of the spirits pressing down on her. Suddenly, a door creaked open at the end of the hall, revealing a dark room. The laughter returned, more insistent now, pulling her toward the open door. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was dimly lit, filled with old toys and forgotten memories. In the center, she saw the Johnson children, sitting on the floor, their faces pale and expressionless. They were surrounded by a swirling mist, and their laughter echoed hauntingly around the room. "Lisa!" they cried, their voices filled with excitement. "You found us!" But their eyes were dark, hollow, as if something was missing. Lisa's heart sank as she realized the truth. They were not the same children she had known. The spirits had taken hold of them, twisting their innocent laughter into something sinister. "No, you have to come with me," she cried, reaching for them. But as she stepped forward, the mist thickened, blocking her path. The shadows loomed closer, whispering secrets of the past, and Lisa felt the weight of their despair pressing down on her. "Have you checked the children?" they echoed, their voices rising in a chilling chant. Lisa stumbled back, fear gripping her heart. "I can't leave you, please." But the children only giggled, their laughter ringing out like a twisted melody. The room began to spin, the shadows closing in around her as the spirits danced in a macabre celebration. In that moment, Lisa understood the truth. The Johnson family had not found peace. They were trapped in this house, bound by their tragic fate. And now, they wanted her to join them. "No!" she screamed, her voice filled with desperation. "I won't let you take me." Summoning all her strength, she turned and ran, bursting out of the room and down the hallway. The laughter followed her, echoing in her ears as she raced toward the front door. The shadows reached for her, but she fought against them, her heart pounding as she pushed through the darkness. "I won't let you take me," she shouted, finally reaching the door. With one final effort, she yanked it open and stumbled into the cool night air. The spirit's laughter faded behind her, but she knew they were still there, lurking just out of sight. As she stood on the porch, gasping for breath, she glanced back at the Johnson house. The windows glowed eerily, and the darkness seemed to pulse with life. "I'll never return," she vowed, turning away. Lisa ran, her heart racing as she fled the neighborhood, determined to escape the horrors that lingered in that house. But even as she ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was still there, watching and waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross its threshold. With each step away from the Johnson house, the whispers faded, but the chilling laughter echoed in her mind. The legend of the Johnsons had come to life, claiming another victim in its deadly grip. As she reached safety, she couldn't help but glance back one last time. The house stood silent, its windows dark, but she could feel its presence, waiting. The tale of Maple Street became just another whisper in the wind, a chilling reminder of the night when the living and the dead danced together, and of the horrors that linger just beyond reality. And somewhere, deep within the shadows of that old house, the spirits continued their endless search, forever asking, "Have you checked the children?